In the last nugget, we talked about what it takes to set up PSTN access for a single site, and I was reminded as I was going through that, I was like, this is not easy. It's not just plug it in a T1 line and you're like, oh, there we go. There's a lot to it. So now we're going to build on that foundation by talking about a multiple location scenario. So let's say I've got a router. Let's build our first site, right? We've got our router, just like we had in the last nugget, connected to the PSTN. And that router feeds into the, we'll say, the main corporate office. Here's our CUCM server, got our IP phones, our computers, all that stuff is going on there, right? Well, what happens as we now start building into multiple locations? So let's say we add a second site down here. So here's site number 2, and our model for our company is maybe just small offices, maybe 10 people. So we think, okay, well, this will be great for a centralized design to where all these phones get their dial tone from the central site, and I only have to buy one cluster of call manager servers, all sitting right here at the central site, all these phones. So we just keep adding these phones in all these little remote offices, and it goes from 2 offices to 4 offices to 8 offices. We just, our company's doing well. We just start growing to all these little offices all around the nation, all around the world. Now, all these offices will have a connection across the WAN back to the central site. So let's just put central site here. We'll just put site 1, site 2, and so on. Down it goes. Now, how do we start designing the dial plan, the PSTN dial plan for these phones, considering, with the fact in mind that they are actually getting their dial tone from this central location? Well, what we do, and I'll say in a traditional model, and anytime you see traditional model, there's going to be more. In a traditional model, we'll set up mirrored dialing plans and dialing structures for each site. Now, you remember, our dialing structure says, okay, we have the route pattern at the top, right? That's where we define what number is going to be dialed, and we link that to a route list, which links to a route group, which links to the actual device. So in this case, now let me say, for ease of this example, I'm going to use 9.at as our PSTN dial plan. But in the same breath, I want you to know that 9.at is not what I would recommend for your PSTN dial plan. I'm just using it for simplicity. 9.at, I'll say it is useful if you just want a quick and dirty, like, let's get to the PSTN, because it encompasses the entire North American numbering plan for a specific environment. So sure, that works for this example, but know that both I and Cisco would step up and say, we recommend doing a manual PSTN dial plan, because that's where you can put your restrictions and filters and all that kind of stuff on very easy. And initially it sounds daunting to say manual PSTN dial plan. Just create a dial plan for the entire world, right? But if you use your wildcards well, like here's your emergency numbers, your service numbers, now I'm talking North America, right? This is our 7-digit dialing, our 10-digit dialing. And I will say, these are here for a reason. These little 2 through 9. I'll just share when I set up the first routers that I ever had for voice over IP for a production environment. I was a victim of toll fraud. What I mean by that is I had a router that was connected actually via a SIP. It was using an ITSP, Internet Telephony Service Provider, to provide telephone access for this site. And so what I did is I was on there configuring dial peers, and I configured a dial peer of just dot 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 dot, which was 10 digits, 10 digits in there, and I did not put the bracket 2 through 9 in there. Well, I'm just saying, okay, well that only allows 10 digits. Well, it'll be any 10 digits, and the thing is once the call is connected, it we'll just keep collecting digits. So I actually had some scandalous person out there come into that router, originate calls from the outside world, and then actually loop them back around to the ITSP and start using essentially my router, well, I'll say the company's router, to make all these international toll fraud calls. It was a hard lesson to learn, and I know some of you are like, there's just so many things wrong with doing that, Jeremy. Yes. Yes, everybody has a first time, right? When they first configure a production router. I'm just telling you that make sure that when you're designing this and you set this up, these bracket 2 through 9, they're filters, so you can't plug in, for instance, in North America 011 there instead of 2 through 9, or it can tell the difference between a 10-digit dialing string and one that starts with the number 1, which would be a long distance number in North America, 11-digit dialing string. So here's our international dialing. So splitting this apart, right there on the screen is the entire North American numbering plan in a nutshell, in what is that, 6 different route patterns. So it's not too bad to manually create a PSTN route plan. However, just so I don't have to write up those 6 route patterns every single time, I'm going to just use the 9.at for this example. Okay, back to the multiple locations. How do you do it? You've got all these phones. They're centrally managed. Well, this is where your partition and calling search space wizardry would have to come into play. You would say, I'm going to create a partition for the main site, and I'd maybe just call it main PSTN partition. And I would create a route pattern, 9.at, that points to the route list that contains the a route group that contains the devices. You know, this whole little chain. Now, we could be lazy and just create this pattern that goes straight to the device that points to this device at this location, right? And says this is how we get to the PSTN. Then I would create another 9.at route pattern. You can do that. So I'd have a second. So this one would be in maybe the central, we'll call it central PSTN route partition. Route, not route, but partition. Then I would have, this would be the site 1 PSTN partition. I would create another 9.at and point it to the route list, to the route group, to the device that connects to this one. So it goes out, you know, when somebody dials 9 here, it actually is hitting, you know, these guys have a calling search space that includes this site 1 PSTN partition. So when they dial 9.5551111, it knows to go out its local PSTN. And then I would create site 2 PSTN, say 2 PSTN. Same thing, another 9.at, and I would just keep going. Now keep in mind, I'm putting 9.at, but in reality, if you're following best practice and you really want to have that manual dial plan, which I'd suggest, you're really creating 6 individual route patterns, right, for every single one of these locations and putting them in a partition. And I mean, it's a lot of work. And now I'm talking 3 locations here, but it's not unusual for a larger organization to have 50 of them, or 100 of them, or let your mind go to, you know, insurance companies, or just, you know, people that have those little small strip mall stores, you know, fast food chains, where they might have, you know, 50 stores in one region, and they use IP telephony. You know, every single time, I'm a nut. Every single time I go somewhere and I'm in a drive-thru at a fast food restaurant, like Cisco IP phones have that ring. You know, if you don't change the default ringer, I hear it ring as I'm chewing on my, you know, Whataburger sandwich and fries, and I'm like, oh, and I turn to my wife, I'm like, they use Cisco IP phones here. And immediately I'm like, I want to talk to somebody. I'm like, is anyone here, you know, I'm looking behind the counter, anyone here knows how that Cisco IP phone work? You know, so there's these large organizations, just fill in any organization that has tons of remote sites where, wow, this, if you've got 6 route patterns for every single one that you're filling, good grief, just becomes insane. So the traditional model works, and this is how we've been doing it for years and years and years, is creating these route plans for each site. In Call Manager 7, put that stamp in your mind, Call Manager 7, they introduced a new feature called local route groups. Let me first emphasize that local route groups are an efficiency mechanism. They save you a ton of complexity and configuration in your call manager, but they are just that. They're an efficiency mechanism. I emphasize that to say you can accomplish anything using the traditional model that I just showed you. That, and matter of fact, before Call Manager 7, there was a lot of versions. 6, 5, 4, 3. I mean, keep going down the list. So until that version, that's all we had was that traditional model, and it worked okay. It's just a lot of config and complexity. So if you have, and the reason I say that is, if you have a company with maybe 2 sites or 3 sites, there's no harm in using that traditional. I mean, you can have 50 sites, and there's still no harm other than the amount of configuration you're going to have to do in that traditional model. So local route groups is just a way to do it better. Here's how it works. The big challenge with the traditional model is that we have to recreate the wheel every single time we have this local or these route patterns, you know, the manual route patterns. So I'll just put 6 patterns, you know, 9.at is my cheap way of putting it quickly. So I create those 6 patterns again and again and again and again and again for every single site that I have. So it's just repetition. I then create a route list for each site again and again and again. Every single site that I have has its own route list and route group and devices that actually get them. So what Cisco did with this local route group concept is said, you know what? There's something that really differentiates every site anyway. You know what it is? A device pool. Now I know some of you are like, device pool? Where did I hear that before? It may have been a while. Remember the device pool? It's probably one of the first things that we talked about when you start learning Call Manager in CIPT1. System menu, device pool. and you click find. So every single site, and actually this is from CIPT1, I left the config in there. Every single site needs its own device pool because the device pool sets what call managers it uses. It says the date and time group. I mean, you might have, let me just jump back, you might have phones in Arizona and phones in Australia. Now that's quite a stretch, but supported by the same call manager cluster. Well, naturally those phones are going to have different time zones, right? Same thing, Arizona and Texas, a little less of a distance there. But so you need a device pool because you have to be able to assign different time zones to the phones. You need a device pool because you have to give them different regions, which tells the phones which codecs to. Is this ringing bells? You guys remember the device pool, hopefully, right? So the device pool is really where you lump together a lot of the configuration. Well, take a look at this. Cisco said if we have to create unique device pools for each site anyway, what if we allowed you to assign the route group, again, come back here, the route group from the dial plan to the device pool of the phone at that site? Now, I know you're like, okay. No, that's not where I'd expect you to go, oh, I get it. No, totally. So that's just one piece of it, right? So follow me with this. Okay. So let's say we've got two sites, right? Our central site is Texas. Our remote site is Arizona. So let's just assume the Texas stuff is all set up, right? So I've got that all set up, the PSTN, using we'll say a traditional model or whatever. That's all set up. So now it's time for me to configure the PSTN access for the Arizona site. Follow with me. I'm going to go to the device menu, go to gateway. Let's add a new gateway. Let's just, because they're quick and easy, I'll throw an H323 gateway at it. And let's just say that this represents the router. Let's say VG in Arizona is the device name. That's vegetarians in Arizona, right? So we come down here, make sure I've got all my ducks in a row. Whatever. I say so many cliches, and I don't even know what they mean. Ducks in a row. So I've got my voice gateway in Arizona. It's ready to go. I'm then going to say I'm going to add that voice gateway to its own route group. So we'll just say now I'm going to be very particular when I name this route group. I'm going to say this is going to be the local group for Arizona. Okay, and I'm going to add the VG. There we go. Add the voice gateway in Arizona to this route group, right? Following along so far, right? Okay. Okay, so I've got now a route group called local gateway in Arizona. Now, if I were following the traditional model, right, I would say, okay, I created the device, the voice gateway in Arizona. I added it to the route group. I would then add it to a route list, and then I would create a route pattern for that, put a partition around it, and boom, I now have the dial plan for Arizona. But I'm not going to do that this time. Watch this. This is where local route groups go a little bit different. So I take that voice gateway that I created in Arizona, go to the device pool, Arizona phones, and I say, okay, the device pool, which is going to be assigned to all the phones in Arizona anyway, right? Because I have to do this to set their time zone. I just want to make sure everybody's there with me, right? I'm going to go to this local route group and say LG Arizona. So I just... Okay, you're following so far, right? I created the voice gateway, I created the LG Arizona route group, and then I assigned that to the device pool. Mind you that I would have had to create that device pool anyway, right? So I'm not adding any more complexity than what was already there. Okay. Here's where it gets fun and interesting. Now I'm going to go to the route list. Let's configure a route list. Yeah, right here. So call routing. Route/hunt, route list, and let's add a new one, and I'm going to name this one PSTN for all sites. I'm picking that name because I want to really emphasize here's the difference with local route groups. All right, PSTN for all sites, and let's do route list. Right, so click on save. Okay. Now I've got my route list. Now you remember this is our route plan. We're configuring from the bottom up. I added the device, added the route group. I know I'm doing this twice, but I just want to make sure everybody follows. Now I'm adding the route list, which I'll link to the route pattern, right? So now I'm at the PSTN for all sites route group. I'm going to click on add route group. Wait a second up here. I am not going to add the LG Arizona, because that would link this route list specifically to the Arizona route group, and it would always go that way, right? That's the old way. That's the traditional way of doing this. So instead, I'm going to hit the drop down and choose this standard local route group. What a weird name. the standard local route group. Okay, hang on. Let me save it, right? Click on OK. Save it. So I've got the standard local route group. That is not a route group that you can see. It's not a route group you can edit. It's actually, there's only one of them, and it's always called standard local route group. Let me just prove it to you. I'm going to go back to call routing, route group, hit define. Well, actually, you can see it right there. The only route group I have is this LG Arizona, but when I go to the route list, you notice I've got this PSTN for all sites, and it's got this standard route group. I can add that local route group, that standard local route group, to as many route lists as I want to. I can reuse it as many times as I want, but what that does is say, look at the device pool to find out which route group to actually use. Now I know some of you are like, oh, right there. I know others may be like, huh? So let me finish the config, and then we'll put it all together. So the last piece is I'm going to go create my route pattern. Now in this case, I'm just going to create one route pattern, but know that normally you would create 6, at least for North America, at minimum, to manually create that PSTN dial plan. I'm going to point this to the PSTN for all sites. So 9.at, we'll throw it in. Let's throw it in the internal partition again. So all sites would be able to access this. So I would put it into a, I'd probably create a PSTN for all sites route partition and put that in the dialing plan for every single site that I have. So all 500 of my little strip mall sites, I would add that partition to their calling search space so everybody can access this. So 9.at is pointed to the route list. You do all your stripping and all that kind of stuff. Discard the pre-dot and so on. But that's I use 9.at, so I have to pick. This is the North American numbering plan. Okay. So there it is. let me tie all the pieces together for you. So now we have this 9.at, which everybody can access, right? Hang on, let me just clear this off. There. 9.at, right here, that everyone at every site can access. So I don't have to create a million 9.ats like I did in the traditional world. I don't have to create all of those specific ones. So I create one 9.at and point it to one route list, which you saw. I named it the route list for all sites, or route list for whatever, the one route list, which then points not to a specific route group, but to a standard route group. Standard, I should squeeze in there, local route group. So what does that mean? That means when somebody in Arizona dials 9.511, some PSTN number, that hits the call manager here at the central site. It goes, oh, I matched it. Okay, it's going to this route list. Oh, it's going to the standard local route group. Hit the brakes. I need to look at the device pool for that phone that just made that call and find out what can't talk. What local route group are they configured? And that will fill in the rest of the dial plan. My friends, the local route group. That eliminates all that complexity that we saw on the previous slide. Instead of creating the route pattern for every single site and the route list for every single site, I create one to rule them all. That's the complexity that's eliminated. Then all that's left is just filling in a route group and, well, we'll just say in this case, one device for each site, and we're good to go. Perfect. Well, the upcoming nuggets are just going to build upon this more and more as we start getting into redundancy and THO, tail end hop off, which is a fun concept. But for now, I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like